welcome to the Ghost of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm Mackelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 107 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today we'll be discussing chapter 33 of A Clash of Kings, that's Catelyn 4.
And as always, we're going to chat about the chapter, and we're going to try not to spoil any future plot points for you. And hopefully, while we do all that, we're going to provide you some entertainment along the way.
We'll summarise what's happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the TV show, indulge in a little pedantry, and cover some reader mail. Be sure to check out the show notes. They'll help you, particularly if you're not reading along. How are you?
I'm still a little hot from yard work, but otherwise...
Oof, yeah.
Hopefully won't sweat all over the mic.
Yeah, we delayed recording to allow us to do yard work, and I'm impressed that you did it, because I just was like, nah, I'm not doing it. It's just too hot already. So it never happened.
It was your idea.
I know. But when I woke up, I was like, it's already hot, and I don't need to do it.
It is, yeah. I got out there about 8:30, and it was already above 80 degrees. So
yeah, it's crazy.
It's supposed to get near 100 today, I think.
Yeah.
But you might notice I'm wearing new headphones.
I wouldn't have noticed, but go on.
And so I bought them yesterday because Stacy and Molly went to the mall to do some school clothes shopping, and I went along. And as I am absolutely useless and very much not welcomed or wanted in any way at that part of the journey, I just wandered around the mall, and I went into a store and I bought these headphones. And I got home and threw away the receipt and box and all that. And then as I was cutting grass this morning, I was like, oh, wait. I should have hung on to that receipt for tax write-off purposes. So
yes.
So then I went and got surgical gloves and went into the garbage, which was now in the main, like, outside garbage can. Uh-huh. And unfortunately, with dinner last night, we had coleslaw, which was just dumped. I did it. I dumped it into the garbage can. And so I'm rooting through this terrible coleslaw funk and everything else that was in there. But I did manage to find the receipt, so...
Well done. I mean, I'm hopeful that this is worth it in the end. Because just, like, detour into US tax law, hasn't US tax law changed to the point where keeping that kind of receipt becomes less and less valuable?
I think so, yeah, probably.
Yeah, because I remember
know,
the last couple of years I've done my own taxes. I go through, like, 1,000 calculations, and at the end of it says, oh, just use the standard
Take your
deduction.
standard deduction,
like,
right?
Why did I bother with all that?
Right. Yeah, I might have done that.
I wish it just said up front, unless you've got a ridiculous amount of deductions, you're going to be taking the standard deduction, so skip all this.
I'm going to save you some time. Just take the standard deduction. But then think of how that tax software would take a hit in the sales department.
Yeah.
If everybody was just like, I'll take the standard.
You know what? I'd be grateful to that software. I mean, I wouldn't want to pay as much as one would have to normally pay for it if it was skipping over 9/10 of the battle. But I would be grateful for the saved time.
True, yes. Solid point. But I hope the accountant might, next winter, might be like, why does this receipt smell like coleslaw?
Is that August coleslaw I'm getting?
Anyway.
I was just talking to my brother, and he said that he just listened to the episode where we had a long digression about fratricide and how wrong it was, and he was contending otherwise.
That must have been the previous cat chapter.
And funnily enough, as he talked, I began to think, I think he might have a point.
He's on to
I'm
something.
beginning to see the benefits here.
Yes, I guess he maybe sided a little more with Renly than us older brothers.
Perhaps, yes. So he's going to be on television. I've told you this before, yes. He's going to be on television. Some, not reality show, but sort of like people who've bought property in foreign countries and sort of renovating it. He's going to be on one of those TV shows.
Sums him up well. Yeah, it's a good fit.
Well, yes, I mean, technically none of that applies to him, but, in principle.
That's true. Good point. Anyway,
but it's quite exciting. I mean, they've been to see him. They've had 3 recording sessions. They're going to have 3 more before it's done.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Maybe he's.
He said he said in the most recent one, the guy came around with the video crew and they set up, and it was what they call the long form interview, which is where they sort of do a long interview with him that they'll intersperse in the rest of it.
Sure.
And
yeah.
The interviewer said, so the one thing you have to do is that my voice won't get on here. It's, you have to repeat the question in your answer. That was the one thing they told him. And my brother said, as soon as I started answering the questions by saying, the reason that I bought the house was, the guy started yawning as soon as I started talking.
Were you interested at all in my answer?
Yeah. The guy said, no, I'm really not interested at all. I just need to get through this.
Hey, can we get him a Ghost of Harrenhal shirt to wear on the...
Ooh, that'd be cool.
Anyway.
So, yes. All right, let's get down to business. All right, how do we leave Cat? It's very recent, in fact. We're only 2 chapters away from the last Cat chapter. She was also chapter 31.
Yep.
So we're on chapter 33. Even I remember most of this. we saw Cat trying to broker peace between and talk sense into the Baratheon brothers. It was very much to no avail. They were hell-bent on destruction. And the chapter closed with her headed to a sept to pray for a miracle. Why don't we give them the summary of this one?
All right. Cat is escorted to a small sept by Sirs Wendell Manderly and Robar Royce. The sept is a small, no-frills kind of place. She prays to the various gods to look over her family members. Seeing the vaguely drawn faces of the 7 causes her to think about others, including her parents, and even Cersei Lannister. And while thinking of Cersei and the news Stannis gave her that King Robert's kids were actually Jamie Lannisters, some pieces fit together about her hunch that a Lannister sent the assassin to kill Bran.
She figures that Bran must have seen something incriminating between the Lannister twins, and that's why they wanted him dead. She also assumes Jon Arryn and Ned knew as well, and Cersei had them killed for it. So Robar retrieves her from her prayers as the night is getting late, and King Renly wanted them back before dawn. On the ride back to camp, Cat ruminates on how the darkness of the night turns all banners and men grey, like a nondescript, indistinguishable grey army. Only Renly's royal tent stands out, emitting emerald green light.
Sir Parman and Sir Emmon of the Rainbow Guard keep watch over the entrance to the tent. Inside, Cat finds Lords Tarly and Rowan going over battle strategy with King Renly, while Brienne armors the king for battle. Lord Rowan says that the host is ready for battle and urges Renly to strike now, pre-dawn. The king finds the idea unchivalrous. The chosen time was at dawn. Randall Tarly points out that it was Stannis who chose the time, and it will cause Renly's men to charge into the rising sun, making them half-blind.
Renly discounts the issue, saying it'll only be a problem until Sir Loras breaks the enemy lines with their vanguard, and then there'll be chaos. The king adds that when his brother Stannis falls, he wants his body protected from insult. He is his own blood, after all. Lord Tarly asks what should be done if Stannis yields. Lord Rowan does a spit take at the absurd question. He was at the siege of Storm's End during Robert's rebellion, and he recalls Stannis eating rats rather than open the gates. Renly too remembers the siege and Stannis' hard stance.
Renly tells a story of how 3 knights tried to escape Storm's End near the end of the siege. When they were caught, Stannis ordered them flung from the castle walls. Only Maester Cressen's intervention saved the men from their fate, when he pointed out that cannibalism isn't out of the realm of possibility and there's no sense in flinging away good meat. Now, Cat's waited long enough for her audience with the king, but before sending his lords away, Renly mentions that if they happen by Sir Barristan Selmy, that no harm is to come to him. Like they could if they tried. Good luck with that.
Finally, Cat gets her chance to speak her mind. She tells Renly, calling him Your Grace to butter him up, about her suspicions of the Lannisters, and asks that the battle be postponed so that she can tell her story to Stannis. When Renly asks to what end, she proposes that Bran be brought forward to speak on what he saw. After the Lannisters are discredited, Robb, Renly and Stannis can lay down their claims, and instead a great council can be held to vote on a new king.
Renly has no interest in such a plan. Cat begins to plead with him when an odd gust of wind blows through the tent. Cat looks at the door but sees nothing but Renly's shadow. While Brienne puts the finishing touches on the king's armor, Cat notices that his shadow is oddly lifting its sword, while the king's sword is actually in its scabbard. And suddenly Renly's throat bursts open, as though run through with a sword.
Confusion takes hold. As the king falls into Brienne's arms, dying, Brienne screams, which brings the Rainbow Guard, who are manning the door, and a pair of men-at-arms. When the men take in the sight of a blood-soaked Brienne holding the dead king's body, certain assumptions are made. 3 men charge her, vowing her life for their kings. A stunned Brienne snaps into action, defending herself against the men. An equally stunned Cat finally comes to her senses and pleads with Sir Robar to help Brienne. She's innocent. It was some sort of sorcery cooked up by Stannis involving a murderous shadow. Cat swears on her honour as a Stark. Miraculously, Robar buys the story and agrees to help. When the 3 guards have been dispatched, the women escape the now burning tent. They reach Cat's party, and as she and Brienne mount up to flee, Cat thinks that all these men are now Stannis's. He won them with one evil stroke. Then she remembers that Stannis lumped her son Robb in with Renly as a traitor. A chill goes through her.
I guess we see why Stannis was so confident in the previous
chapter.
Yes,
he never really intended to fight a big battle against overwhelming odds.
Yes, this was much easier.
Yes. So yeah, where to begin? The first part of the chapter is the best description we've had so far about the faith of the Seven. We've kind of spoiled that a little bit, because we do background, we often sort of like delve into these kinds of things.
Right.
And I guess it's gleaned from information that gets pieced together over the course of the books. It's not exactly a spoiler, sort of like it's good to know about the Faith of the Seven earlier on. But so there are a couple of things that I don't think I realised before, that the sept is so named because it's 7-sided. So there are 7 walls holding up the roof.
Yeah.
And then each wall sort of has a facet of the god on it. And so the various septs can handle those depictions of the gods in different ways. Some have statues. This particular one, it feels like it's a bit kind of lower rent, and it just has sort of like paintings of the gods on the 7 walls.
Charcoal drawings, I think, is
charcoal drawings, exactly. So and they're quite rough. I couldn't decide if this was like just a really poor town that could only afford to like let some kid take their best stab at the 7, or if it was like a sort of like an artistic impression, if they decided it would be good to have a sort of charcoal sort of smudgy version.
Right, yes, avant-garde. Yeah, I think it's the former of your
yeah, probably. But you got to think, I mean, if you're a septon, I mean, like, you come in and you see what the artist has done and you're like, okay, either this is avant-garde or you're not very good.
Right. That is not at all what I imagined in my head.
Exactly. So basically, I'm going to go commission some statues, all right? Thanks for your efforts.
We'll be right back.
Hello, friends. Are you ready to make some unforgettable memories? Well, if so, consider the Marriott Bonvoy program. Discover the perfect destination for your summer getaway and unlock exclusive deals on luxurious accommodations. With our affiliate partnership, you'll enjoy unbeatable savings and a seamless booking experience. Don't let summer slip away. Visit Marriott Bonvoy today and make this vacation season one for the books. Use our Ghosts of Harrenhal affiliate page to check it all out and buy Bonvoy points or give some as a gift. The link to our page is in the show notes. Yeah, I thought we got some pretty good info. I think most of the stuff we haven't given away in background info, like the fact that the sept has 7 walls, that I don't think that's come up before. So that was neat new information we got here.
Yeah. And so as she goes round praying to all 7 of them, and the various faces give her an opportunity for, to consider all the things that are currently worrying her, her sons, her daughters, the kingdom, her lost husband, her dying father. She, when she starts listing her worries, you've got to admit, she does have a few.
Sure.
Some of them self-imposed,
That definitely
she
could
really
be argued.
could be back home at Winterfell with her sons if she wanted to be.
Yeah. Yeah, she prays to the mother to watch over the battle with a mother's eyes, that they're all sons. Everyone participating in the battle is a son, obviously, and to spare them if she can. But then she goes around and prays to the other gods, well, to all the gods except for the stranger, for her various family members. And I just wanted to go through those real fast. So she prays to the maid to give courage to Arya and Sansa to protect their innocence. She prays to the smith who fixes broken things to give Bran protection.
That one makes sense.
Yeah. She prays to the father for justice, the strength to see it, the wisdom to know it. She prays to the warrior for strength for Robb in battle and to shield him. And then she prays to the crone to guide her and show her, keep her on the right path. And I was thinking, yeah, she got everyone, right? Right?
She missed one?
She got Bran. She got the girls. She got Robb. She got herself. She got all the Starks, right?
It wasn't a god she missed. It was one of her children.
It was one of her children. The strangers over there are like, I'll get Rickon. No worries.
I'll take Rickon if you want, but usually people don't pray for that.
Yeah. So, whoops.
Poor Rickon. She reminisces about. She gives a little bit more family history. She reminisces about her mother's death and the impact it had on her father. It's not quite clear how old she was when her mother died. There's quite a wide range of how old she might have been, from too young to even remember her mother up to a teenager, so she'd remember her very well.
Right.
But she does wonder what her mother would think of what she's doing. All this travel she's doing and what she achieved. I mean, she's achieved very little, apart from throwing the kingdom into utter turmoil by arresting Tyrion
In some
Lannister.
ways, she's achieved a lot. Just none of them were her original goals. You could make an argument she's achieved more than anyone else at this point.
Well, true. She's definitely had an impact.
Yeah. She does mention that... she mentions her mother being very calm. So she does have some memories of her mom. So she was, at least old enough to have memories of her. But
you know what? If she was 3 years old when her mother died, that might be what she's had imprinted on her. You know what I mean?
Calmness.
Yeah, exactly. She sort of like tallies the problems that she's, not the problems that she's facing, but how she's doing as a mother. She's lost her daughters. Robb apparently doesn't want her, keeps sending her away. Bran and Rickon think her cold and unnatural. Or, I mean, if Rickon returns the compliment and thinks of her at all. And she wasn't with Ned when he died. So, that's as wife and mother, that's a pretty poor list of achievements.
You could see why she's being a bit hard on herself there. Now, it's probably best that she wasn't with Ned when he died.
Right, she is being terribly hard on herself. I mean, none of it's really her fault that all of this is happening, well, with some exceptions. But, generally speaking, she's having to make tough choices.
Yes. So then I was wondering, what if Cat had stayed in Winterfell? How different things might have looked. And so you start off, obviously, Tyrion was not arrested. Littlefinger doesn't tell her that it was Tyrion's dagger. So obviously she doesn't make the trip to King's Landing to get that info from Littlefinger. So then Tywin doesn't begin to harass the Riverlands, at least when he did. Jamie doesn't ambush Ned and kill his men, because he did that because of Cat taking Tyrion captive. Yeah. And so maybe he doesn't leave King's Landing because the war in the Riverlands isn't starting as imminently. So maybe he's still there. And also maybe there's more Stark men around Ned because he sent a bunch of his men off with Beric Dondarrion.
Yeah, all true. So the dagger's interesting, though. So she finds the dagger and does nothing about it. Does Peter Baelish know that the dagger was used? Because, I mean, Peter Baelish tells her pretty promptly where this dagger came from. Does he know what she knows about the dagger? When she brought the dagger to Peter Baelish, did she say, this was the dagger that was used to attack my son?
No. Varys mentions that when he comes
in. But Baelish knows it. Baelish knows it. So Baelish could be thinking immediately on the fly, I can blame the Lannisters for something and cause trouble.
Yes, absolutely.
But Baelish didn't necessarily know in advance that a dagger had been used in an assassination attempt on Bran And
right.
He couldn't... What I was thinking was, could he have gone to... If she'd stayed put in Winterfell and never come to King's Landing with a dagger, could Peter Baelish have gone to Ned and said, hey, you know the assassination attempt on your son? The dagger that was used was owned by Tyrion Lannister. Because...
I don't think so, because Ned wouldn't have even known about the attack on Bran until someone sent him word, because they'd already left or Winterfell at that point.
Yeah.
Now, she could have sent someone else. She could have sent Sir Roderick by himself, or sent a bird, sent a raven.
Right. But of course, I do wonder about that. I do wonder about the security of ravens being sent to King's Landing when
Yes.
Ned felt he was in a viper's nest. I mean...
Right.
Unless it's in some kind of code.
That would not have been the best idea. Probably sending Sir Roderick or some other trusted Stark household person would have been the most secure way to... I'm sure Sir Roderick wouldn't have loved it, because he doesn't exactly enjoy the sea life. So.
Right.
But also...
He could have told her he was going by boat and then ridden the whole way.
Cat, in King's Landing, told Ned that he can trust Littlefinger. Although Littlefinger, of course, kept telling Ned otherwise. So It's still likely that Ned would have ended up being too trusting of Littlefinger and would have fallen for his manipulations. But
because he judges everyone by his own standards. Always did.
Right, yeah. Now, there would have been no reunion with Lysa, because she only ended up going to Lysa because she had Tyrion and she was trying to hide with him. And so she wouldn't have seen how unstable Lysa has become. And so, anyway.
But then that only matters if there's a war going on in the Riverlands that Lysa's not sending troops to.
Yes, true. Very true. Yeah. Then Tyrion would have arrived in King's Landing unaccosted, but then he wouldn't have met Bronn or the Mountain Clansmen, and so he would have just shown up just by himself, so he would have been a bit weaker for not having gone through all that.
Yeah, that's very true. That one's an interesting one. What would Tyrion be doing now had he not gone through the experience with Cat? He would probably be in King's Landing as a layabout, probably not in a position of authority.
Tywin wouldn't have been otherwise occupied with the war in the Riverlands, at least, as long as there was no... Now, when Ned tried to usurp the throne after not usurp the throne, when Ned tried to enforce his king regent laws and take control of the throne until Joffrey was of age, then Tywin might have stepped in and done something,
right. Right, but I mean, given let's assume that Joffrey still does what Joffrey did, Ned still ends up 8 inches shorter.
Yes,
and
right.
And then everything kicks off, but it kicks off with currently peace and tranquility in the Riverlands. Yeah,
right. And possibly Tywin in King's Landing as Hand of the King.
Well, yeah, true. So. But I mean, yeah. Well, interesting fan fiction we've created there.
Right. There'd also be an adult Stark in Winterfell instead of Bran and Rickon. So.
Right. Which, man, I wish that was true.
Yeah, I'm sure the boys do too. Rather probably have their mother than being raised by the wolves.
Yeah. But as she prays to the mother, it does occur to her, sort of like she has a bit of an insight into how Cersei must be feeling.
Right. Yeah.
All of this war basically is the point of the war for everyone but the Lannisters is to get Joffrey Baratheon off the throne, and that will lead to Joffrey's death, and probably Myrcella and Tommen's too, because they're in line to the throne, but everybody believes them now to not be legitimately in line to the throne. And so the best way to get rid of false claimants to the throne is to kill them.
Yes, and she kind of, unknowingly backs Ned's decision to give Cersei and the kids a chance to flee, because she thinks in her head, when she saw Robert with Joffrey in Winterfell, she noticed that there was no warmth between the two of them, and she figures he would have absolutely have killed Joffrey had he believed this to be true. That
and for sure Stannis will. Yeah. Stannis is willing to kill his own brother for this.
Right.
he's going to be more than willing to kill Jamie Lannister's incestuous offspring.
Yes.
So all of this thinking about Cersei sort of leads her to the great insight of this chapter that if Jamie and Cersei, which she's, only in the last chapter did she discover this accusation, are the parents of Joffrey, Myrcella, and Tommen, then chances are they have sex with each other. I believe there is a connection there.
Sure, seems likely, yes.
And then she thinks back to the day that Bran fell. And the day Bran fell, everybody went hunting, but not Jamie. Jamie stayed home. And so there was an opportunity for Jamie and Cersei to have some alone time together.
Right.
While Bran convalesced, the Lannisters sent the assassin to kill the job. It all makes sense to her now. Bran saw them in flagrante.
Right.
And so she has intuited exactly what happened.
Yeah, and she did so based on the information that Stannis gave her last chapter. That was the missing piece for her to at least come up with this idea.
But I like that it didn't just instantly fall into place for her. I think that would have been too much of a stretch. I think it took a little bit of like, wait a minute. Because it's not like they like to climb towers and have sex. It was they have a child, they have 3 children together,
Right. Yeah.
But
yeah.
I gotta say, poor Bran, now, no wonder she's worried about Bran at this point, because, he saw them having sex, and they're brother and sister. It's like, the fall is probably the least of his worries. No wonder he has nightmares.
We'll be right back.
This episode is sponsored by Audible. To get a free audiobook, or 2 if you're an Amazon Prime member, go to our exclusive URL, audibletrial.com/ghostsharrenhal. You can find the link in our show notes. Back to the cat staying in Winterfell thing, I wonder if she had stayed in Winterfell, if he would have confided in his mom about the Golden Man push dream, that when he started to think that maybe it was Jamie Lannister that pushed him out of the tower. He's been thinking to himself, I don't want to tell anybody this because I don't even know if it's a true memory or if it's just some sort of weird dream thing. I wonder if he might have confided in his mom about this.
Yeah, at that point, she'd be like, okay, I'm beginning to believe this now. I got all this evidence. So her hope is that this could change the course of the, of the Baratheon war. Basically,
right. Yeah.
If she can convince Renly of what she's now figured out, she could perhaps convince Renly to hold off on fighting Stannis, and then come together to say, look, this could be a bloodless coup. We go to King's Landing, we announce to the world what's happened, and we say, we get Bran down there to give evidence. And all of this just completely clears this up in the minds of everyone. I would think, unless you're a real Lannister loyalist who doesn't want to listen to this, you'd be like, okay, so now I totally believe that Jamie and Cersei have sex. Therefore, I completely believe that these 3 children are not Robert Baratheons and therefore not legitimate. And therefore, they have no claim to the throne, so we'll have a new king, somebody else.
Yeah, of course, in that plan, she's assuming at this point that Bran will recall what happened prior to the fall. Right,
when she left, he was still unconscious, right?
Yes,
when she left.
She doesn't know that he's starting to have memories of it, but it's very possible he might never remember what happened before he fell.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, you're right. And of course, when she runs this plan by Renly, he doesn't even consider it. He's
right. The fatal flaw with that plan is that there's only one natural outcome, which is Stannis Baratheon on the throne, and that really is not what Renly's looking for. Never has been.
Yeah, you're right. His shot at it, because yes, obviously, if this comes out that if it's believed universally across Westeros that the Baratheon kids in King's Landing are not Roberts, then Stannis is obviously the rightful heir, which would not be good for Renly's chances. But his one thing he's got going for him is that he is the charismatic one. He's the wooer of the knights and lords, and he rattled off.
If rumors are to be believed, he is the wooer of knights. Yes.
Yeah, true. And he rattled off all these attributes as to why he's better suited to be king. So, it's not. He'd have to play into the fact that, look at Stannis. He rubs people the wrong way. He's not good at compromising or playing the political game. You don't want to put him on the throne. You want to put me on the throne. You guys like me.
Yeah. Honestly, if I'm Renly and I'm already committed to the path I'm on, I say to Cat, absolutely. Everything you're saying, absolutely. Let me just go kill this guy.
Just be right back.
Kill this guy, and then we'll do exactly what you say, Catelyn. You're 100% correct. And then, at this council, you're like, it's Renly Baratheon. He's the natural heir to the throne.
Yeah, that's a good point. That'd be one way to do it.
Yeah, because at that point, if Stannis is alive, there's no one but Stannis gets the throne, despite everyone thinking this is a bad idea. He just gets the throne.
I guess, unless Stannis is willing to say, which he's not going to be. I mean, she knows Stannis as well as we do. He's not going to say, okay, I'll put it in the hands of the lords. Let them democratically choose the person they think is best suited for this job. Yeah. But I was thinking about it, like if they did do this great council, which she says, hasn't happened in 100 years. I assume you've got to get the majority out of the 7 kingdoms, or maybe it's just like the Lord Paramount from each of the kingdoms, like electoral college style. Like they, within the kingdoms, they do their thing, and then the Lord Paramount casts their vote based on what they're hearing from their people. I'm not sure, but Renly's already got the reach in the Stormlands, so he's already 2 up, and
right.
Robb has the North and the Riverlands, but Robb's not looking to become the king of Westeros. He just wants to be the king in the North.
Yeah.
So, in that regard, Robb becomes a very important person in this whole vote.
But actually, you saying it like that shows the simplicity of the situation. The simplicity of that situation is what the compromise between Robb and Renly at that point is. Robb says, you have the Riverlands vote. The Riverlands will vote for you to be on the Iron Throne, Renly, but the North breaks away and is its own kingdom. That's how it works.
Yes, that's not the offer Renly made.
No, if you don't agree to that, then you don't get the Riverlands vote.
Right, yeah. Of course, Stannis was willing to concede nothing to
anyone.
Robb. Yes, right. He wants all 7 kingdoms, and there's no other person styled king. So at least Renly was saying, yeah, Robb can call himself king in the North. I don't care, as long as he bends his knee to me. So at least that's some sort of concession. I wonder if they went through with this, if he might be willing to take 6 out of 7 in order to be the king of the 6 kingdoms.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I think there'll always be a tension, but probably the North is sufficiently safe from attack to mean that it'll always just be a tense situation,
Right.
And I mean, what do you lose? I mean, presumably the North pays some taxes to the Iron Throne. It's not the richest region. It can't be the difference between being super wealthy and like fantastically wealthy.
Right.
Give it up.
We were talking about that on the Discord server just this past week about why are they even fighting for it? Why do they care? It's cold. It's it's sparsely populated, and as an added benefit, you can get rid of having to man Castle Black. Let the king in the North deal with that.
Interesting.
You don't even you can wash your hands of that.
or I tell you what you could do. Build a second wall just south of Mackelly.
Right, there you go.
And you man that with way less troops, because it's a lot narrower at that point.
Good point, yeah. Yeah, but, if Renly says, sure, if Stannis agrees to this, I'll agree to it too. Stannis is never going to agree to that. He's way too unbending to be like, okay, cool, yeah, I'm in. I'll lay down my claim. He's never going to go for that, so...
Well, I don't know, actually. I don't know, because yes, he is way too unbending, of course. But at the same time, if you think it through the way we're thinking it through, Stannis concludes that this is the way for him to become king without any bloodshed, particularly.
That's a good point. Yeah. If he's willing to look at it that way.
Right. He will long term have to deal with Robb Stark, but in the meantime he gets the Iron Throne.
Right. Yeah.
Right now he's a million miles from the Iron Throne with no troops and very little chance. But this council puts him on the Iron Throne. He may have to go and knock some heads together, but then he'll have the whole of the 6 kingdoms to work with him. You know?
Yes, you're right. That's true. If he thinks about it that way, he is the logical heir in such a council. Yeah. But so once again, just like we were talking last cat chapter, Renly shows his military strategy novice that he's
weaknesses.
Yes, so Randall Tarley and Mathis Rowan are urging him to, let's attack now. We're ready. Everyone's ready. Let's go. And Renly says, and what? It be thought that I won this battle unchivalrously? No, we're gonna wait till dawn. That was the time that was agreed upon. And Randall Tarley correctly points out, yeah, that was set by Stannis. We're going to be riding east toward the rising sun, and we're going to be half blind. And Renly's response is, only for the first wave. When Loras breaks their lines with the vanguard, then chaos will ensue. And I'm not sure that's the greatest strategy.
Well, it's definitely not. I mean, he's not wrong. Chaos will ensue, but in the meantime, that vanguard is going to take unnecessary losses because of the sun in their eyes. But I will say, the sun is behind a castle called Storm's End. There is the pretty good chance it'll be cloudy.
It could be. Although she mentions that when they're riding in the pre-dawn darkness, she mentions that Storm's End is even darker than everything else. She's kind of talking about how dark it is out there, and that even the stars aren't shining through Storm's End, obviously. So
the clouds.
So maybe there's stars out. Maybe it's not a cloudy morning.
Yeah. No, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's an inevitability to the way this battle would have gone were it to be fought. But yeah, I mean, it is stupid. But I mean, it feels like you could mitigate against that. I mean, you're going to be riding down on Stannis, basically, because your entire force is mounted. Right. You could ride... I mean, you're heading due east.
Right.
Half a mile away from Stannis, you split and then come at him from the north and south, and then you're not...
Exactly. At least consider some options of how to advance without riding in directly into the sunlight, instead of just being like, yeah, it'll be a mess for a while, but, then it'll sort itself out. It'll just be chaos. And when I read that part, I started to see why Tywin thought Stannis was the most legitimate threat. That was his big concern. He wanted to take care of Robb quickly so he could turn his attention to Stannis. And and that was before he, at least as far as Cat thinks, has 100,000 man army.
Right. Which of course then begs the question, what is the outcome of all this? I mean, on the one hand, he is obviously inheriting 100,000 troops here. It's like, hey, there is only one Baratheon left. I am the heir to the throne. Bend the knee to me, and we're all good. But the flip side, there's two flip sides. One is, that's unusually forgiving of Stannis.
Right.
His reputation suggests that he won't be like that he will actually start beheading people from that 100,000 for their treachery. Okay, but let's put that one aside. Let's look at the 100,000. Are they going to be okay with this? Are they going to think, what did you have to do with this, Stannis?
Exactly.
Your brother just got murdered just at a very convenient time for you. Upon whose orders?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is, so Loras Tyrell and Renly are pretty close buddies.
Apparently.
And, if he thinks that Cat played any part in Renly's murder, if Loras Tyrell thinks that Cat played any part in Renly's murder, then he's likely going to consider siding with the Stark's enemies, which would be the Lannisters. If he thinks Stannis
Right.
played any part, which Robar might very well say what Cat told him, then he very well likely isn't going to back Stannis, and that he is, granted, the youngest son of Mace Tyrell, but he's still the son of Mace Tyrell, the Lord Paramount of the Reach. That's a pretty big voice in the room. So I think it's a little bit premature for Cat to automatically assume that all 100,000 are going to now back Stannis. But advancing with the story. So right before Renly sends his Lord Mathis Rowan and Randall Tarley off for their final battle preparations, he says, "Oh yeah, by the way, if you come across Barristan Selmy while you're out there on the battlefield, have him spared, please." And
yeah. And to be clear, he's expecting to find Barristan Selmy on the other side, amongst Stannis'
right,
men,
amongst Stannis' men.
Not like he might just be lurking within his own 100,000.
If you happen past a tent and you see a guy with a gray beard, now of course, and as Mathis Rowan points out, there's been no mention of Sir Barristan since Joffrey tossed him out of the Royal Kingsguard.
Right. You might have expected to see him in the last chapter when Stannis rode up with Melisandre. If Barristan Selmy was on Team Stannis, I would put him in that entourage just to show who you got.
Right, absolutely, yeah. And Renly is convinced that Barristan Selmy needs a king to guard, otherwise who is he? So the mystery continues. Where is Barristan Selmy?
You know what? I think although he walked off in a huff, he actually took the Lannister deal. Nice little villa on the coast. Yeah, actually, now
that I've had some time to cool down, it sounds actually kind of nice. Now, Stannis would. So, he was 2 Cat chapters ago. The first Cat chapter when Renly and Cat were talking, Renly had heard that Barristan was going to go support the true king. Now, of course, if he's going to do that, Stannis would have made the most sense, especially if he had heard and believed the incest accusations while on the small council. Then he would, be like, well, okay, I'm going to go back to True King then. So it would have made sense for him to be with Stannis, but we've not heard. We've had a Crescent chapter and a Davos chapter, and there's been no mention of Sir Barristan Selmy being around.
Have we had a Davos chapter since Selmy left?
Yes, we had Davos 1 in this book.
We have? Oh, yeah. Okay. Right. Oh, because, Selmy was at the end of the last book. Yeah, that's right. Hey, so I forget how long he's been in the wind. He's been in the wind a good long time now.
Many a chapter.
Yeah. So the shadow that enters the Renly pavilion, at first Cat doesn't think anything of it. It just looks like Renly's shadow. It's shaped like him. And, I mean, honestly, I've never really thought of a shadow as looking like someone, but it seems to belong to Renly. She just thought that the fact that it was moving in a way that Renly wasn't was just the tent in the wind.
She thought it was weird, but didn't really think much of it.
Yeah, but then it draws a sword, and that begins to look a little bit different from what she's seen. I mean, sure, moving slightly is one thing, but actually drawing a sword, the whole thing is quite confusing to read, actually. I mean, I think it's intentionally not completely clear what's going on.
Because her thoughts aren't completely clear while she's watching it happen.
Exactly, yeah. But once the dust settled, she's pretty convinced that it was Stannis. I mean, she says it was Stannis, and then she qualifies that as being some sorcery that Stannis... But I think she actually thinks that somehow this shadow was a manifestation of Stannis Baratheon, not just a random monster.
That Stannis sent.
Right. It was, in fact, somehow Stannis' shadow come separate from...
Now, she is aware that Melisandre was with Stannis, because she was there as well, so she knows that he has a Red Priestess of R'hllor with him. Now, whether she knows what Red Priestesses of R'hllor are capable of or not, I mean, this is the first we've heard of such a thing. So, and R'hllor, the R'hllor religion is not very prevalent in Westeros, so she might not have thought anything of, oh, I bet it's that priestess that he had with him, but Robar's quite the open-minded young man, because he totally buys the Stannis Shadow Monster story right off the bat there. Now, she does have to swear on her honor as a Stark and on her husband's grave, but he buys it, and he says, get her out of here. I'll hold them up.
He's from the Vale, right?
Yeah.
Right. So he has an affiliation with the Starks, which perhaps make that swearing a little bit more convincing to him. He knows Ned was raised by Jon Arryn.
True. That's a good point. Yeah. It is, like, if you think of the story, it was a shadow monster of Stannis that killed the king. That's what happened. Okay, if you say so. Now, I was thinking about how this death compares to Ned's in A Game of Thrones, because both were kind of a shock, Who would have thought Renly was just going to die like this,
Well, certainly Stannis and Melisandre thought it.
I'm thinking more of the readers.
Thinking back to what they were saying to Renly last time they saw him, they were pretty convinced he was not long for this mortal coil.
Yeah. Now, of course, Ned's was slightly different because he was pretty much the main POV character in A Game of Thrones.
Right.
So, but it's possibly as impactful as far as this war goes. We now, instead of having 5 kings warring, we now only have 4 kings. If you consider Balon Greyjoy, as he considers himself a king. So we've lost one of the 4 contenders here.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely going to have an impact. I mean, I'm not sure quite as impactful as Ned, because we went from a situation of relative calm to, well, now we've got considerable war across the kingdom.
Right.
We've already got war in the kingdom. It's just changed the calculus of that war.
Yeah.
But it's changed it significantly, for sure. I mean, if Stannis can convince the 100,000 to, well, if Stannis doesn't murder them all and convince them to join his side, he's gone from no chance he's going to win back the throne to he's going to be the next king of Westeros very soon.
Yeah. I imagine, he told Cat he's here because he needs the men that are sworn to Renly.
Yeah.
So it seems like he's likely going to be fairly forgiving in this situation.
Right, and if he takes the 100,000, 120,000 now to King's Landing, he is not going to stop along the way for tournaments.
That's true, yes. That seems very likely.
He is... all business is our Stannis.
Straight on to King's Landing, no stops.
So Cat and Brienne run, and I do wonder if that's the right decision, because it feels like once that initial sort of like, hey, we got to fight Brienne because she appears to have killed Renly, dies down, then if if you get to a point where you're actually having a conversation about it, it's very hard to believe she would have done it. I mean, everybody knows how much she loved him. Now, okay, you got to believe in sorcery for it not to be Brienne.
Yes, the actual answer is a bit of a stretch to have to accept first.
True. But he does have this woman who has a reputation. Now, whether that reputation has reached Renly's forces, but certainly she has a reputation within Stannis' forces for having sorcery.
Right.
At her disposal.
Yes, right. But
and
the last Cat chapter, Brienne was named to ride alongside Loras in battle, and she wanted to stay with Renly because she felt like her place was to guard him. Some might argue she was a coward. She didn't want to ride in this battle. She wanted to stay back with the king, and so instead of having to go into this battle, she killed him instead.
Wouldn't that make the king a bit of a coward too?
If he stays in the back.
Yeah.
I did have that thought when he says to his lords, I don't want any insult coming to Stannis' body when he falls. I thought, oh, that's very different than how your brother rode into battle against Rhaegar, because he rode into battle to face him one-on-one, and Renly doesn't seem interested in facing Stannis one-on-one.
No. And honestly, I don't blame him. I think Stannis is a bit of a is going to be quite tough to beat.
Yes. Yeah.
You got some background?
I do. So Cat talked to Renly of allowing a great council to decide who should rule, after having Bran announce to the world what he saw between Jamie and Cersei. She referred to it as a council like the realm hasn't seen in 100 years. Now, that's a bit of hyperbole, but it has been a while. So back between 209 and 233, 3 kings reigned in fairly quick succession at King's Landing. But when Maekar Targaryen died in 233, there was a bit of an heir issue. We talked a bit about this issue and its outcome back in Jon 8 of A Game of Thrones when Aemon revealed that he was Maekar's son. And again in Jon 1 of A Clash of Kings when Mormont was explaining Aemon's history to Jon. And if you recall from that, Aemon was the oldest surviving son of Maekar because his older brother Daeron died of a pox and his other older brother Aerion died from drinking wildfire. However, both of them had children who could have been considered as heirs to Maekar. Now, Aemon was already a maester when his father died, so technically, he wasn't an option as heir to the throne. Maekar's youngest son, Aegon, as we affectionately know him as Egg, was a viable option. But so because of the muddied water, the late King Maekar's Hand of the King, Brynden Rivers, called for a great council. Maekar's oldest son, Daeron, had only a daughter, Princess Vaela, and in Jon 1 of A Clash of Kings, Mormont describes her as feeble-witted and simple girl. And Maekar's second son, Aerion, had a son who was born just before Aerion died, and the little prince was ominously named Maegor, which is not...
So, he's named Maegor after the cruelest Targaryen of all time. And he was the son of Aerion who drank wildfire.
Yes.
Not encouraging, but go on.
Yeah, the 2 grandchildren were fairly quickly ruled out by the council. A few did speak up for baby Maegor. However, due to his father's madness and known cruelty, he didn't gain much support. And his name probably wasn't helping either. And like we've discussed before, Aemon was already a maester, and his vow prevented them from consideration. So, therefore, Aegon was the logical choice, but he'd spent much of his life roaming the realm with the hedge knight Sir Duncan the Tall, and many of the High Lords thought of Aegon as half a peasant. So there was a secret effort to offer the throne to Aemon, allowing him out of his maester vows, but Aemon refused. And while the council was debating on the 4 existing possibilities, a 5th popped up. Aenys Blackfyre, a son of Aegon IV's legitimized bastard Daemon I, wrote from Essos, wanting to throw his hat into the ring. Brynden Rivers, still acting as Hand of the King, invited Aenys to come to King's Landing and participate in the election. However, when Aenys arrived, Brynden had him arrested and executed. It's kind of a long story, but the Blackfyres, which are the names for Aegon IV's legitimized bastards, had already tried 3 rebellions to get one of their family on the throne. So, eventually, Prince Aegon was elected king, becoming King Aegon V. His first act as king was to have Brynden Rivers arrested and sentenced to death. The reasoning was that, although all were happy to have another Blackfyre pretender out of the picture, his duplicitous actions with Aenys reflected poorly on the Iron Throne, and as the word of the throne must engender faith, therefore, Brynden Rivers must face the punishment. Although Aegon was eventually persuaded to allow Brynden Rivers to take the Black, and he was accompanied to Castle Black by none other than our Aemon Targaryen.
How interesting. That's an interesting culmination to all that.
Yeah,
So the Hand of the King got sent to the wall along with the king's older brother.
He didn't get sentenced. He chose to go. But, yeah.
Right, no, yeah, sorry, yes. But they went together to the wall. Interesting. So, comparison with the television show. So, we don't have the treading water scene of Cat praying, but we certainly have the murder scene and Cat and Brienne escaping. What is different in the show is we see where the shadow monster comes
Oh,
from.
yes, I recall.
Right, it's hard to
Hard
forget.
to forget.
Nothing is left to the imagination. I think it's safe to say. It is definitely sorcery from Melisandre that sends this shadow to complete the deal.
Right.
So, yeah.
You know...
but yes, this is all captured.
Speaking of the source of this shadow, obviously Cat thinks that it's Stannis, and the TV show makes it pretty clear that it's Stannis. But she did pray to the mother to protect all the sons that were going to fight in this battle.
Yeah.
And so you could make the argument that, the mother sacrificing one son for the greater good of the other sons.
I'm following.
So, anyway, just a thought there.
Pedantry. You have something?
I do. It's not really pedantry. I just didn't know where else to mention this. But, so, Kat, between leaving the sept and getting to the castle, getting to Renly's tent, she's riding through this pre-dawn darkness, and she's talking about how dark it is, how the knight's armor was so black, it was like the smith had hammered the darkness of the night into it, and talking about how all you could see was just the gray outlines of everything. And then she mentions Storm's End being an even darker mass where no stars could be seen around it. But what she doesn't mention, which is odd for a nighttime chapter at the moment, is anything about the comet. And I would have thought she would, because the comet is, we've heard it, that it outshines the moon at night, and that is visible by the day. And we learned in a Bran chapter that it's visible in the morning, eastern morning sky. And so I just thought, it's very unusual for the comet not to be mentioned in such a situation.
You are correct.
I wondered if maybe it just, it wouldn't be seen, but it's mentioned, that Bran chapter, it's mentioned it's visible in the morning sky, so...
Maybe it's directly behind.
Yeah, I had that thought too.
That's the only possible explanation for why this would be true. I was trying to think if maybe they're far enough south that it isn't as prominent, but they're only a little bit south of King's Landing here, and they are no further south than Essos, and it's certainly visible in Essos.
Yes, right, true. Yeah, so not really pedantry. I'm just surprised that it never came up.
That is pedantry. That is rock solid pedantry. It's bright. It would brighten the sky.
Yes. Especially if it's outshining the moon and visible in the day.
Exactly. If you're outshining the moon and visible in the day, you are pretty bright. Yeah. And that would make the dark far less dark.
So
solid pedantry. I take nothing from you on that one. Well played.
Oh, thank you.
News and notes.
News and notes. So a group of scientists from the University of Sydney created a tectonic simulation of how the continents in the world where A Song of Ice and Fire takes place, which is often dubbed Planetos, shifted and transformed over the millennia, similar to how our continents here on Earth were formed. They said they pulled together the information for the simulation by collecting evidence such as past volcanic activity and mountain building. And they say that those things, the activity in mountain building, or volcanic activity in mountain building, are smoking guns for tectonic plate convergence and collisions. One assumption that they made was that Westeros and Essos broke apart about 25 million years ago to create the Narrow Sea. Okay. I will share that. What? I will share the video on our social medias.
That's very interesting, right? Because I thought we talked earlier about the sundering of Essos and Westeros. But am I wrong in thinking that the Children of the Forest had something to do with something?
They broke the arm of Dorne.
They broke the arm of Dorne. That didn't connect all the way to Essos.
It did, but it was just a pathway between the two.
I see. Okay. So the greater rendering of these two was earlier, because 25 million years seems a lot of time to have passed for the Children of the Forest. That's timescales that we have not been dealing with to this point.
We've been dealing in the thousands.
The timescales we've been dealing with are long. I mean, 7,000 years is a long time of human history. But,
right.
25 million is a different kettle
Now,
of fish.
I have no idea how, if it's possible for like the Arm of Dorne to have stayed connected when the rest of the continents were breaking apart. I don't know enough about plate tectonics for that.
I would assume so. I would assume things can happen piecemeal,
Right, yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Anyway.
We have a very nice review from Gardenberg from Denmark on YouTube. He or she said, started a few weeks ago, amazing podcast. Just reached the 50th episode, had to see the video. Maybe that'll draw an end to it, having seen our faces. No more interest. Keep up the good work. I'll try and catch up as fast as possible. Well, thank you.
Thank you very much. Great review.
Conclusion. One thing I'll say, and I haven't really focused on this here, but if I was new to Westeros and I was picking a religion, I might go with Relor. I mean, that's pretty strong. That's pretty, if your god can do that. Now, what you just said about Cat, her prayer coming true, is also interesting. So maybe I'll go with the Faith of the Seven too.
Well...
But the thing about that is, that's way less tangible. Relor actually did something here. He was like, okay, you want me to go and kill that guy?
Right,
sure.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Yeah, so far, this is a significantly bigger trick than surviving the drinking poison thing that Melisandre did in the prologue of A Clash of Kings here. But, if this was Relor, like we are thinking that it is, that's 2 miracles, which is 2 more than we've seen so far from the 7, unless, of course, it was the mother that did this on Cat's behalf. And it's a very useful weapon.
Yeah. I do wonder, actually, I hadn't really thought about the fact that Cat's prayers came true. I wonder if it might make her more religious. I wonder if she'll be like, well, I'm going to be very much more careful and specific with what I pray for in future, but can't argue with your ability to deliver.
You got to be very specific. It's like a genie wish, You got to get it exactly right. But yeah, it's definitely a useful weapon here. Is this going to be his plan for all enemies? Just roll up off the coast of King's Landing and unleash a shadow assassin there, and one by one, shadow assassin takes them all out.
I think if the TV show has the right of it, of how this shadow came about, that might be a little hard on Melisandre.
She might be like, you got 3 of these, Max.
Exactly. So Stannis has suddenly gained 100,000 followers, perhaps. Great news for Stannis. Not great news for Joffrey and Cersei.
No.
Very bad news for them, I would say.
It absolutely would be. Now, of course, she's making this assumption, and we've kind of shot a few holes into her theory here already. Like I've said, how's Sir Loras going to react? What's he going to believe happened, and how's that going to influence how he goes, how he moves forward with this whole situation? Because, as I said, he's the son of Mace Tyrell, who's the warden of the South and the Lord Paramount of the Reach. That's a lot of power, and so these Tyrells are going to hold a lot of power.
Yeah,
and what happens?
I got to say though, I find it very hard to imagine the Tyrells going back to the Lannisters here. I mean, it just feels like that's too much. I mean, as long as Stannis can bury the hatchet enough with them, I think they will ultimately forgive. Although, of course, they are married to Renly, aren't they? I'd forgotten that Marjorie's married to Renly.
She was, yeah, right. But what they could do is just decide to sit it out, like you have been figuring all along they would do, because they're fat and happy and don't need to get involved.
Yeah,
they could just decide to pull out and say, like the Vale, nope, we're out.
But the thing is, you can decide that with pretty much anyone but Stannis. If you say no to Stannis, he's going to treat you as an enemy from that point onwards.
Good point.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, like, what happens when the others arrive at the tent? Will Robar explain what Cat told him? Is he gonna utter those words? It was a shadow monster, like, Is anyone going to believe that story? Now it's now third hand.
And now Robar looks suspicious. So wait,
right.
you're not even from around here, are you?
Yeah, so that will be an interesting development. I hope we get to see how that plays out.
Yeah. Cat and Brienne, they better get out of there quickly. But this is possibly good news for Cat. I mean, Brienne has no loyalty to anyone anymore. Cat is trying to save her, so maybe a sort of like a nice personal bodyguard for her.
Sure. Yeah.
If Brienne can get her wits together, I think she may be a bit destroyed by this.
Yeah, it might take a while for her to pull herself together.
And especially given the fact that that she's being blamed for it. That might be the hardest part for her.
That's what I was going to say.
Not only did she fail in her duty to save him, but actually is being blamed.
Right. And if Renly's remaining guard think that she did it, if they believe Brienne killed King Renly, will it become a race? Will they chase the Stark group with Brienne in tow all the way back to Robb? Will it become a who can get to safety first?
I gotta say, if I'm Stannis, I think I might, I get my 100,000 troops, and then I say, all right, look, we all know it was Brienne of Tarth.
It wasn't me.
But I'm not going to waste any time hunting her down. We'll catch up with her later. Let's focus on getting the throne back first.
After I take the throne, I'll spend my life tracking down Brienne to do justice for my little brother.
Yeah.
But if Stannis did inherit 100,000 troops, does that spell certain doom for the Lannisters in King's Landing? I mean, they've already got a fleet.
Yeah.
Stannis has a fleet, and if he did just inherit 100,000 strong army, they've got land and sea.
Yeah.
That could be bad for King's Landing.
If I were Tywin and I got news of this, then I think I might be heading down to King's Landing to try and save my grandchildren.
Yeah. At that point, do you start to consider conceding? Because you're not going to survive, I guess,
or that.
Right?
Yes, I mean, get out of there. Abandon King's Landing, go back to the west and lick your wounds.
Yes, or maybe leave Westeros. I don't know if they can...
But I don't think you need to do that. I don't think you need to do that, because if you were to abandon King's Landing now and go back to the west, what's Stannis' beef with you? You claimed the throne because you were, in essence, the rightful heir. The truth came out. You were proved to be a false king. You stepped off the throne,
Well, yeah. If Stannis
that's relying on Stannis being forgiving, and we know he isn't.
Right. Exactly.
All right. As always, you can reach us at ghost.harrenhall@gmail.com, and you can follow us on Twitter at @GhostHarrenhall. We're on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Discord.
And if you please go out and leave us a 5-star rate or a glowing review, we certainly would appreciate that. And if you go leave us a glowing review, you just might hear it on a future episode.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.